In today's video, I'm reviewing a 2010 BMW X3. The X3 is a small crossover SUV that's based on the same platform as the BMW 3 Series and is BMW's second SUV offering on the market after the success of the BMW X5. Since the introduction of the X3, BMW's also began producing the smaller X1 and X2. Now this is the first generation model of the X3 that was produced from 2003 to 2010. The X3 is now in its third generation. The X3 was BMW's second SUV offering on the market after the wild success of the BMW X5 model. And you see a lot of similarities in terms of the overall style and design of that X5 model carried over to the X3, but personally I'm not real crazy about the execution. I think that the X3 has kind of a weird combination of curves and sharp edges and just doesn't have the same clean overall look that you get with the X5 model. And I think that with the second generation of the X3 that they really improved on this overall design and came up with a vehicle that has a much more clean overall look to it. But putting that all aside, if you go back to 2003, there wasn't a lot of competition within this compact luxury SUV segment. And with that taken into consideration, the X3 really is a pretty solid overall vehicle that really kind of filled a niche that didn't exist at that point in time and has a lot of strong benefits in that sense. And while I do compare it to the X5, which is one of my favorite SUVs on the market, and the updated X3, which again I think is a much more attractive design, I still think this first generation of the X3 is a decent looking vehicle overall. It's, you know, kind of hard when you're comparing it to the newer X3 and the X5 model, which are some of my favorite SUVs out there, because I feel like this doesn't quite stack up, but it's still a pretty good looking vehicle overall. Definitely has an upscale appearance, very sporty appearance, and you know, really kind of filled a nice niche that didn't exist at that point in time that's become a really large segment on the market. You'll see that the X3 has much of the same look that you see in other BMW models on the lineup, with the kidney style grille, headlight design's very similar, and just the overall kind of shape and look of the vehicle is very consistent with that BMW lineup. You'll see that the hood on the vehicle looks very similar to the hood that you get on the X5. Really taking a lot of the design cues of that X5 and kind of shrinking them down and giving it some of those sharper edges to give it its unique look. And with the second generation X3, you see that they really stay a little closer to the overall look of that X5. Get a nice set of stock wheels. It's one of the things that I love about BMW models, is that every model comes in a really nice configuration where you don't have to change anything once you buy the vehicle. It's not a vehicle where you have to go aftermarket and get different wheels or make other upgrades to it. It really comes in a nice solid package to begin with. See, it's got integrated side rails and BMW crossbars. Also got a panoramic sunroof. Got those side blinkers on the front fender. Coming around to the back of the vehicle, again you see that the overall style here is very similar to that X5 model, with the layout of these taillights. Slightly revised, but pretty similar overall. Got dual exhaust on the driver's side. You'll also notice the parking sensors integrated into the rear bumper. Got the antenna up on the roof here. Got some nice plastic body molding along the bottom of the doors here. It gives the vehicle a very aggressive, sporty appearance. And then up on this front bumper, you'll see that we've also got those parking sensors. So on the front and rear, those will beep to notify you if you're getting close to objects. You also notice that there's an integrated sprayer that will pop up and spray those headlights if you got mud or other debris on there that you want to clean off. As you'd expect with a BMW model, the X3 comes with a really nice high quality interior that's got a nice clean layout, high quality materials. It's got wood accents, two-tone color configuration, and just overall a very premium feel to it. It's one of the nicest things about BMW models is that because they have these really high quality interiors, as the vehicles get up there in age, they hold up really well. So this specific vehicle is 9 years old with over 100,000 miles and shows very well. They also come very heavily loaded, so we've got power windows, power door locks, power mirrors, power driver and front passenger seat. And another really cool feature about the X3 is that those power mirrors and power seats are integrated. So when you adjust the seat, the mirrors on the vehicle will also adjust automatically. So a pretty cool feature. We've got fog lights. On the steering wheel, we have controls for audio, Bluetooth, and cruise control. You also notice that it's got a little M logo on there. This actually isn't an M model. They don't make the X3 in an M configuration, but it's an M trim package. See that we've also got that M logo here. And then if you look on the wheels, it also has that same M logo. So kind of an interesting package to offer on the vehicle because it gives the impression that it's an actual M model, but they don't make the X3 in an M configuration, at least not with the first generation. See, looking at the instrument cluster, it's got a nice classy look to it. If we take the key out, put it into the ignition, we've got a center screen in the dash that will pop up. It has audio for the vehicle, navigation, Bluetooth and phone connectivity information, and then a number of other vehicle settings that can be controlled through the system. It's controlled with the use of these buttons here. Because this model was introduced in 2003, it's not the most functional or intuitive system. They've definitely improved a lot over time, but it gets the job done okay. We've got AM/FM radio, CD player. You can also connect a phone or MP3 player through the Bluetooth or an auxiliary input. You'll see that we've got dual zone climate control for the driver and front passenger. We've also got heated seats for the driver and front passenger, hill descent control, the ability to turn off those parking sensors, and then the vehicle also has tire pressure monitoring. See, we've got a little compartment here with ashtray and cigarette lighter. Cup holder here in the middle, parking brake, and then got a center console with 2 compartments. So that's the larger one and then a smaller one up top. Over on the passenger side, got another cup holder integrated into the dash. Of course, the doors also have some storage space included. Another thing with this screen, since it pops up in the middle of that dash, if you want to drop it down while you're driving, you can do that with the push of the button and the system is still functional. Up above, we've got the self-dimming rear view mirror with the ability to program up to 3 garage door openers. It's also got an integrated compass, some reading lights, and then you'll see that we've got a panoramic sunroof. So it spans all the way across that back seat. It does slide to open, and then using this button here, we have the ability to close a screen that will cover that panoramic sunroof. So if you want a lot of light, you can open up all the way, and if the sun's really bright, then you can close that and get nice shading inside the cabin. Looking to the back of the X3, you'll see that it's a little bit tight for an SUV, but fairly decent headroom and legroom. It's going to work for the most part, might be a little bit tight for a car seat. You'll see that we do have heated seats for both side passengers, an auxiliary input to plug in your phone or MP3 player, and then a 12-volt outlet. Give you a quick view to the front. This center seat does fold down into an armrest. We've got a compartment here, and then using this button here, flips open, and we've got 2 cup holders. Seats will also fold down in a 60-40 split. And I forgot to mention, we've also got an integrated ski bag here. So if we pull this guy down here, push this button, this compartment opens up and you'll see that there's a ski bag integrated here, so you can pass those through the seat. Keeps the seats dry if there's snow on them. See that in the door, we've got another storage compartment. And then coming around to the rear hatch, you'll see that it's fairly spacious, a nice square area, so it's fairly functional. And then of course, ability to fold down those seats in that middle row can expand cargo capacity further. The first generation model, the X3, is offered with a single engine option. It's got a 3-liter 6-cylinder with 260 horsepower and standard all-wheel drive. It can be had with either a manual or automatic transmission. The EPA rating is 16 miles per gallon in the city and 23 miles per gallon on the highway with the manual, and 17 miles per gallon in the city and 24 miles per gallon on the highway with the automatic transmission. Now, I'll throw out a disclaimer that I'm more of an Audi guy than a BMW guy. I've had 5 Audis and 3 Volkswagens, and I've never owned a BMW. But there have been several times in my life where I've had loaner cars that are BMWs, and I test a lot of BMWs, and I'm always impressed with the driving characteristics. They tend to be a lot more exciting to drive, a lot more dynamic overall experience than what you get with Audis. And they really are impressive vehicles. But I've got to admit, getting into this first generation X3, my expectations were high, and I'm not incredibly impressed with the overall driving experience. It definitely is a solid, nice vehicle, and I think really kind of the issue that gets in the way for me is that I actually own a 2013 Audi Q5, and so you know, it's only a 3-year difference between this vehicle and my Q5, and my Q5 has a much nicer interior and much nicer driving experience, and it's a lot more powerful than this vehicle. The difference, though, is that this first generation of the X3 was introduced to market in 2003, and so this is the last year of that first generation model. It really is effectively a 2003 vehicle, and it's not really that fair to compare it to, say, a 2010 Q5. But because the two vehicles were sold on competing lots at the same time, I think you kind of have to. And, you know, certainly going back to 2003, the X3 was a really great vehicle. There wasn't much of a compact luxury segment at all, and it really is a nice vehicle for that era. But by the time you get to 2010, there's a lot of competition out there, and personally I think that the Audi Q5 is a much nicer vehicle than this X3. Now, if we pretend that this isn't a 2010 and we think of it more as an early 2000s model, it really is a pretty nice overall package. It does have a good powertrain. It's a very luxurious vehicle, very comfortable, very quiet, and it really is a fun vehicle to drive. And so certainly don't want to say that it's not a great vehicle, because it really is. It's just that by the time you get to these later years of the X3, it really is showing its age. The other thing that I want to mention about this X3 too is that even though overall it's a pretty high quality interior, you can definitely tell the difference with this first generation X3 when you compare it with the rest of the BMW lineup. You don't get that with the second generation X3 or the third generation X3. Those really have a very similar feel of quality that you get with other BMW models, but at least for this first generation X3, it kind of felt like they were cutting corners. Doesn't have quite the same high quality feel that you get from other models. You may be able to hear that there's a little bit of a rattle right now, pretty uncharacteristic for BMWs. And then the other thing that I'm not too impressed with on this first generation X3 is the seats. They're not really that comfortable. They feel pretty firm, not that supportive, and just isn't necessarily the most comfortable vehicle. Give you a chance to hear it in action and see that it's really not all that bad. It's got a pretty good sound to it, fairly smooth transmission, and definitely gets us up to speed no problem. And so, you know, compared to most other compact SUVs, this is still going to be a lot faster. I'm just not as impressed with the powertrain as what I would typically expect for a BMW. So that's the 2010 BMW X3. Definitely a pretty solid vehicle overall. It's got some nice highlights, and if you look back to 2003, there wasn't really much competition within this segment, and the X3 really was one of the best options out there. By the time you get to this 2010 model, the X3 has a lot more competition, and it's showing its age within the segment. If you're looking to get into a model from the late 2000s, I'd go with the Audi Q5 over the X3 model, but again, this is becoming an old vehicle by that point. Once you get to that second generation model, the X3, BMW really ups their game, and the second generation model, the X3, is a whole lot nicer than this vehicle. For what it is, it's a pretty solid vehicle and definitely a good option if you want to get into an inexpensive, compact luxury SUV. If you have any comments or questions on the X3, leave them in the section below. For more car reviews, subscribe to my channel. In the meantime, thanks for watching.